The tent lay open like a carcass, its synthetic walls torn from the inside outward. Forensic analysts measured 3 parallel rents, each 22 centimeters wide, beginning at shoulder height and terminating at ground level with surgical precision. No debris scattered the perimeter. Inside, the sleeping bag remained undisturbed on the left side of the tent floor. The right side bore a hand-shaped impression in the fabric, 5 fingers splayed, measuring 28 centimeters from wrist to middle fingertip, significantly larger than any registered hiker in the search grid. The question that would follow search teams into winter was simple and unanswering. If he tore open his own shelter and left it that way, where did he go? On October 14, 2023, at 6:47 a.m., Marcus Hendrick sent his last text message to his sister from Glacier Peak Wilderness, a 564,000-acre expanse of alpine terrain in north-central Colorado. The message read, "Camp established, visibility excellent. We'll call base camp at 80 The temperature at that elevation, 11,400 feet, registered 34 degrees Fahrenheit, with clear skies and winds at 8 knots from the northwest. Hendrick was 47 years old, a mountaineer with 19 summits above 14,000 feet, and a reputation for meticulous planning. His climbing log spanned 12 years without a single missed checkpoint or deviation from filed itinerary. He had arrived at the Glacier Peak trailhead on October 12 at 4:15 p.m., driving a silver 2019 Toyota 4Runner, which he parked in the lower lot, away from the main facilities. Witnesses, a park ranger named Thomas North Star Voss and a pair of backpackers, confirmed seeing him check in at the ranger station at 4:42 p.m. Hendrick carried a satellite communicator, a personal locator beacon, a GPS unit with fresh batteries, and a paper topographic map marked with 3 waypoints in purple ink. The waypoints formed a triangle roughly 8 kilometers on each side, encompassing a remote basin known for rare alpine wildflowers and minimal foot traffic. Hendrick's stated objective was botanical observation and photography. His itinerary, filed with the Park Service, indicated October 12th-13th, base camp setup and acclimatization, October 14th-16th, daily summit rotations between 3 12,000-foot peaks, October 17th, descent and exit. He had reserved a permit for 1 person. No companions, no guide service. This was consistent with his practice. The weather forecast provided to him at check-in predicted clear conditions through October 15th, with a low-pressure system approaching from the southwest on the 16th, arriving around 8 p.m. with possible precipitation. Temperature low for the 14th, 28 degrees, high 42 degrees. At 6:47 a.m. on October 14th, Hendrick's sister Jennifer received his morning text. She replied at 6:52 a.m., "Stay safe, talk tonight." He did not respond. This was not unusual. Satellite communication was spotty above 11,000 feet, and Hendrick often went silent for 8 to 12 hours during climbing days. Jennifer made a note on her calendar. Hendrick's employer, an architectural firm in Denver, expected him back at work on October 18th. His supervisor confirmed no missed deadlines or prior absences in 3 years of employment. His apartment in Boulder showed no signs of personal distress, bills paid, refrigerator stocked, plants watered the day before departure. The search began not with alarm, but with routine concern. At 6:30 p.m. on October 14th, when Hendrick failed to make his scheduled radio check-in, the Park Service initiated a welfare call to Jennifer. She confirmed his itinerary and provided the satellite communicator number. Attempts to reach him went unanswered. By 7:15 p.m., weather at Glacier Peak had deteriorated. Temperature dropping to 31 degrees, wind gusting to 22 knots, cloud ceiling lowering to 11,800 feet. A park ranger, Miranda Scout Chen, made the decision to delay ground search until first light, but to alert the high-altitude rescue team in Montrose, 114 kilometers south. At 7:42 p.m., the weather deteriorated further. Snow began falling at 11,200 feet and above. By 8 a.m. on October 15th, a search helicopter from the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Emergency Division lifted off from Montrose. Visibility was 400 meters at summit elevations, 200 meters in the basin. The pilot reported wind shear and declining conditions. At 8:47 a.m., as the helicopter approached the mapped coordinates of Hendrick's intended base camp, crews spotted a flash of color, neon orange, the color of Hendrick's tent fly. The helicopter could not land. Wind gusts exceeded safe margins. At 9:15 a.m., ground teams began their ascent from the trailhead. The first team consisted of 4 personnel: Scout Chen, North Star Voss, a dog handler named Richard Tracker Moss, with a German shepherd named Absalom, and a paramedic named Dr. Lisa Okonkwo. The search grid covered 28 square kilometers. Hendrick's intended base camp lay at 11,287 feet on a gentle slope facing southeast, sheltered by a band of stunted whitebark pines and rock outcroppings. The ground teams reached the site at 11:43 a.m. on October 15th, after a climb of approximately 1,800 vertical feet from the trailhead. Temperature at the site, 24 degrees, partly cloudy, wind sustained at 18 knots. What they found contradicted every reasonable expectation of mountain accident or self-inflicted emergency. The tent stood upright, secured by stakes and guy lines, but its upper walls were torn open, not punctured, torn. 3 distinct rents ran from approximately 1-2 meters above ground level downward to the base of the tent, each measuring 20 to 24 centimeters in width. The tiers were clean, not jagged. The tent fabric, a commercial-grade ripstop nylon rated for extreme weather, bore no signs of insect damage, rot, or pre-existing weakness. Inside, the sleeping bag lay positioned on the left side of the tent floor. Beside it, a battery-powered camp lamp, a water bottle with 600 milliliters remaining, a notebook, and a pencil, all undisturbed. No sign of struggle, no blood, no body. On the right side of the tent floor, pressed into the nylon, was the imprint of a hand. 5 fingers, a palm, a wrist. The print was not ink or mud. It was a depression in the fabric itself, as if something heavy had pressed down from above. Tracker Moss brought Absalom to the tent entrance. The dog circled the perimeter 3 times, then refused to enter. His handler noted this in the log. Absalom showing avoidance behavior. Will not cross threshold. No vocalization, ears back, repositioning. When they repositioned Absalom downwind, 30 meters northeast of the tent, the dog began to bark, a sharp, repeated series of alerts pointing toward the tree line. But when the search team moved in that direction, Absalom stopped, whimpered, and retreated. North Star Voss photographed the ground between the dog's alert position and the tree line. The grass showed no path, no broken vegetation, no tracks. Where Absalom had barked, the ground was undisturbed, as if no creature had passed through that corridor in weeks. Scout Chen measured the hand imprint. The distance from the base of the middle finger to the wrist measured 18 centimeters. The span from thumb to pinky, when extended, would measure approximately 28 centimeters. For reference, the average adult male hand spans 23 centimeters. Hendrick's hands, measured from his medical records, spanned 22 centimeters. Dr. Okonkwo photographed the imprint from multiple angles. Later analysis would reveal that the pressure distribution suggested a downward force applied deliberately, not a passive resting place. The fingers had left clear ridges. The palm had pressed with concentrated weight. Someone or something had deliberately held pressure on that exact spot for several seconds. The helicopter swept the surrounding terrain with increasing urgency. Visibility improved slightly in the afternoon. 500 meters at elevations above 11,200 feet. At 1:47 p.m., observers spotted what appeared to be a bright orange object, 1 kilometer northeast of the tent, on the slope descending toward Mirror Lake. Ground teams were vectored toward the location. What they found was a backpack, Hendrick's backpack, a 65-liter expedition model, red and orange, standard equipment. It lay on its side at 11,089 feet, 350 meters below the tent site. The pack was open. Inside, a sleeping pad, a water purification system, a medical kit, and $340 in cash. Missing: the satellite communicator, the GPS unit, the topographic map, and all clothing except for one wool sock left inside the right boot. Both boots were neatly placed side by side, facing downslope. The pack showed no damage, no tears. The zippers functioned smoothly. At 2:15 p.m., North Star Voss found Hendrick's jacket 180 meters further downslope, draped over a low outcropping as if placed deliberately. Temperature at that location, 22 degrees. The jacket was still zipped, nothing inside the pockets except lint and a stick of gum, unwrapped, still pliable. Around the outcropping, the snow, which had accumulated to approximately 3 centimeters in the high basin, bore no tracks, human or animal, just undisturbed white surface. Beside the jacket, Scout Chen photographed a series of marks in the snow. 3 parallel depressions, each 12 centimeters apart, running for exactly 6 meters in a straight line before terminating abruptly. The depressions were 4 centimeters deep and 8 centimeters wide. Analysis later suggested they resembled claw marks, but the spacing and depth did not match any known predator in Colorado, not bear, not mountain lion, not wolverine. The marks simply stopped. No divergence, no meandering. A direct line from nowhere to nothing. By 4 p.m. on October 15th, the search had expanded to 28 personnel. 3 dog teams were brought in. 2 of the 3 teams showed similar hesitation at specific locations near the tent site, a roughly circular area approximately 80 meters in diameter. Inside that circle, dogs would alert but refuse to advance. Outside it, they would track normally. This behavioral pattern repeated across all 3 teams. No dog would cross the invisible boundary at the center of that zone. A topographic survey of the circle revealed subtle ground composition changes. The soil in the center was slightly more compact, with a higher mineral content than surrounding earth. Samples were collected and marked for laboratory analysis. The second dog team, a beagle mix with a handler named Patricia Shadow Liu, made a single alert at the boundary line at 3:47 p.m., then immediately developed respiratory distress, heavy panting, wheezing, refusal to work. Shadow Liu removed the dog from the search grid immediately. The beagle's condition improved after 20 minutes in cooler air at a lower elevation, but the dog would not return to the search area. Dr. Okonkwo examined the dog and found no physical explanation for the respiratory episode. Heart rate was elevated at 140 beats per minute, but no fever, no foreign object in throat, no abnormal lung sounds. The dog had been vaccinated, healthy, and had worked this region multiple times without incident. The respiratory event remained unexplained. At 5:30 p.m., helicopter sweeps detected no sign of Hendrick. Visibility was deteriorating again. Clouds descended to 11,000 feet. Temperature was dropping. Snow was accumulating at 2 centimeters per hour. The decision was made to suspend aerial operations and establish a base camp with ground teams to resume search at first light on October 16th. As darkness fell, the search area was cordoned off with flagging tape. A perimeter watch was established. 2 rangers remained on site overnight, North Star Voss and Scout Chen. At 11:43 p.m., as Voss and Chen were reviewing field notes in their tent, Voss reported hearing what he described as a high-pitched whistle, sustained for approximately 8 seconds, then silence. Scout Chen also heard it. Both men checked their communication equipment. All systems functioned normally. No wind was sufficient to produce such a sound at that location. The whistle did not repeat. At 12:15 a.m., both men heard a low howl, distinct from any canine vocalization either had encountered. beginning at low frequency and rising to a sustained note at approximately 2,000 Hz before trailing off. The sound originated from approximately 600 meters northeast of their position. They attempted to record it on their field equipment, but the playback was distorted, the audio garbled and difficult to parse. When they checked the recording later, it sounded like wind through broken machinery. The night was clear, stars visible, temperature dropping to 18 degrees Fahrenheit, no further sounds, no movement detected. At 6:15 a.m. on October 16th, ground teams resumed search operations with 41 personnel, 2 additional helicopter teams, and thermal imaging equipment. The search grid expanded to 2 square kilometers. By 10:30 a.m., the search had yielded no additional significant findings. The terrain was methodically swept. No body, no additional clothing or gear, no blood. No sign of struggle beyond the tent, tears, and the mysterious hand imprint. At 11:47 a.m., the satellite communicator was located 4 kilometers east-northeast of the tent, sitting on top of a flat rock at 10,950 feet, positioned with its antenna pointed directly upslope toward the tent site. The device had been turned off, battery level 87%. When activated, it displayed no messages sent or received beyond Hendrick's message to his sister at 6:47 a.m. on October 14th. The GPS unit was never found. The topographic map was never found. By noon on October 16th, low-pressure system reached the basin. Snow began falling heavily. Temperature dropped to 15 degrees. Wind gusts exceeded 35 knots. Search operations were suspended due to safety concerns. An emergency team remained on site to maintain the perimeter, but active searching ceased. The weather continued deteriorating through the afternoon and evening. By 8 p.m., accumulation had reached 18 centimeters. By midnight, 31 centimeters. The search would resume in 48 hours if conditions permitted. When teams returned on October 18th, the snow had stopped. Temperature had risen to 26 degrees. The site was visually unchanged, but something was different. The hand imprint on the tent floor had faded, not disappeared but less defined, as if the weight that created it had lifted in stages. The 3 claw-marked depressions downslope had been filled and smoothed by fresh snow, leaving only slight irregularities in the white surface. The circular zone where the dogs refused to enter was no longer distinguishable. No equipment had been disturbed. No new artifacts had appeared. Over the following month, the search expanded to 23. 6 square kilometers. Ground teams, aerial sweeps, search dogs, and thermal imaging found no trace of Marcus Hendrick. No body, no remains. No final location marker. Police investigators in Denver interviewed his colleagues, family, and friends. All confirmed his stable mental state, no suicidal ideation, no financial distress, no romantic conflicts. His bank account showed no unusual transactions. His employer had marked him as a reliable, punctual employee with no disciplinary history. His climbing partner from a 2022 expedition described him as cautious, methodical, and safety-conscious. No logical explanation for voluntary disappearance existed. The official investigation was closed in December 2023 with the classification of person missing, unknown circumstances, presumed deceased. The Colorado Parks and Wildlife Report concluded, evidence suggests Mr. Hendrick abandoned his campsite voluntarily, likely in a state of disorientation or psychological crisis, and subsequently succumbed to exposure in the surrounding wilderness. Alternative explanations, including wildlife predation, do not align with field observations. Investigation status closed. But field observers disagreed. North Star Voss, in an interview conducted 6 months after the search, stated, "The tent was not torn open from the inside. I've seen what happens when someone cuts their way out of a tent. The tiers are rough, uneven. These were clean, deliberate. And that handprint, I've been a ranger for 22 years. I've seen a lot. That was not panic. That was something else. Scout Chen, no longer employed by the Park Service, made an independent statement to a documentary filmmaker. The perimeter of that circle where the dogs refused to go, I measured it. It was exactly 80 meters in diameter. A perfect circle. Nothing in nature makes perfect circles, except machines or intention. And there was something about that ground, the mineral composition. They sent samples to the state lab. I've never received a report. I've asked 5 times. Nothing. In the surrounding region, within a 40-kilometer radius of Glacier Peak, archival research identified 4 historical disappearances of hikers and mountaineers over the past 30 years. In 3 cases, tents or shelters were found torn or damaged, with no clear explanation. In 2 cases, search dogs refused to work in specific areas without subsequent explanation. In 1 case, a mountaineer named David Chen, in 1998, a satellite communicator was found 2 kilometers from his base camp, turned off, battery fully charged. David Chen was never found. His case remains officially unsolved. A geologist consulted regarding the mineral composition of the soil samples collected from the circular zone reported finding anomalously high concentrations of a polymer compound not naturally occurring in Colorado alpine regions. When asked to identify the compound, the geologist stated that the sample had been sent for external analysis and that results were not yet available. When contacted 6 months later, the geologist declined further comment, citing incomplete chain of custody and insufficient data for public statement. The tent and its contents were photographed, catalogued, and stored in a secure facility managed by the Colorado Parks and Wildlife Evidence Division. The photographs are available through Freedom of Information requests, but they show only general condition. No close-up images of the hand imprint remain in public archives. Requests for additional documentation regarding the fabric analysis, the claw mark comparison studies, or the satellite communicator examination have been denied with citations to ongoing investigation protocols or incomplete analysis. Marcus Hendrick's sister Jennifer has continued to press for additional investigation. In 2024, she funded a private search expedition during the summer season, covering the expanded grid area with additional thermal imaging and ground-penetrating radar. No new findings, no body, no equipment. The wilderness had absorbed all traces. Jennifer established a website dedicated to her brother's case, including timeline documentation, investigator interviews, and field notes from the official search. She has received correspondence from families of other missing hikers, describing similar anomalies in their cases. Tents damaged from the inside out. Search dogs refusing to proceed into specific zones. Equipment found at impossible distances. Unusual ground signatures, and animals exhibiting behavioral anomalies without explanation. A question remains unanswered across all these cases. What tears open a tent from within, leaves no exit track, and departs with intention? What creates a perfect circular zone that frightens dogs and contains material composition anomalies? What turns off a satellite communicator at a deliberate distance and points its antenna toward a specific location? And perhaps most troubling, in a wilderness under constant surveillance by aerial and thermal imaging, how does a body, living or deceased, vanish without leaving a coherent trail? Marcus Hendrick was competent. His equipment was sound. His judgment was reliable. He did not panic or flee. He did not produce evidence of injury or accident. He did not leave a body that could be recovered. He simply ceased to exist within a known space at a measured time, leaving behind only questions. The disappearance of Marcus Hendrick presents 3 competing theories, each supported by available data and each contradicted by equally substantial evidence. Consider these carefully. Theory 1. Disorientation and voluntary departure. This theory suggests Hendrick experienced acute altitude-induced cognitive disturbance, panic, or psychological episode, tore open his tent in a state of confusion, and departed downslope into the wilderness where he succumbed to exposure or trauma. Evidence supporting this. Altitude at 11 through 400 feet can produce acute mountain sickness in susceptible individuals. The torn tent and abandoned pack suggest hasty departure. The landscape is genuine wilderness where disorientation is possible. Hendrick's body could theoretically be concealed in dense vegetation or crevasses undetected. Contradicting evidence. Hendrick showed no susceptibility to altitude illness in 19 previous summits. His body would produce an odor detectable by dogs for weeks. Yet no dog team detected such a scent. The tent tears show no signs of panicked struggle. They are clean, deliberate, consistent with tool use. The hand imprint suggests controlled pressure, not frantic activity. Hendrick's medical records included no psychiatric history or medications. His family and colleagues universally describe stable mental state. The exact circular zone where dogs refuse to enter suggests an intentional boundary, not random terrain. The satellite communicator powered off at distance suggests deliberate action, not abandonment. The topographic map and GPS unit were removed deliberately. Why would a disoriented man erase navigation tools? Theory 2. Wildlife predation. This theory suggests Hendrick was attacked by a large predator, possibly a black bear or mountain lion, which tore open the tent, attacked him, and consumed or scattered his remains. Evidence supporting this. Colorado has documented black bears and mountain lions, predator attacks, while rare do occur. The tent tears could result from animal claws. The hand imprint could be a paw print misidentified. Hendrick's body could be scattered and consumed. Predators do occasionally disable search dogs through predatory scent or territorial aggression. Contradicting evidence. Black bear attacks leave distinctive claw spacing of 8 to 10 centimeters. The marks in the snow showed 12-centimeter spacing. Mountain lion attacks leave puncture wounds, not straight lacerations. No blood evidence was recovered from the tent or surrounding area. Search dogs are trained specifically to handle predator scent and do not show the described avoidance pattern. The hand imprint measures 28 centimeters span, larger than any Colorado predator paw. Predators do not deliberately tear open shelter from outside, nor do they place human clothing neatly on rocks. Bones scattered by predators show distinctive gnaw marks and fragmentation. None were found. The beagle's respiratory distress has no explanation in predator attack theory. The perfectly circular zone does not correspond to any predator territorial behavior. Theory 3. Organized or intentional abduction. This theory suggests Hendrick was deliberately removed from the site by unknown actors who tore open the tent deliberately, incapacitated him without injury, and removed him with deliberate precision. Evidence supporting this. The tent tears are surgically clean, consistent with cutting tools. The hand imprint suggests deliberate positioning, possibly for documentation or confirmation. The artifacts were removed methodically, not scattered. The satellite communicator was turned off and positioned conspicuously. The circular zone and dog's refusal to enter suggests perimeter establishment and control. The perfectly spaced claw marks could be intentional decoys to suggest animal predation. The beagle's respiratory distress could indicate exposure to chemical agents used to incapacitate. The polymer compound found in soil samples is not naturally occurring. The topographic map and GPS unit were removed to prevent tracking or follow-up search. The archival pattern of 4 similar cases over 30 years suggests organized recurring activity. Hendrick's competence and reliability suggest he was a deliberate target, not random abduction. Contradicting evidence. No motive is apparent. The risk of organized abduction operation in remote wilderness on a documented search is extremely high. No ransom demand was ever made. No body ever surfaced. The mechanism of marking a 80-meter perimeter with precision, incapacitating a trained mountaineer without injury, removing a 180-pound adult male from a remote wilderness site under aerial surveillance, and depositing no trace of transport or departure seems logistically implausible. No witnesses reported unusual activity or vehicles. No corroborating evidence of organized human activity exists in the form of boot prints, equipment, or communications intercepts. The duration of occupation required to establish such an operation would be days or weeks, yet no evidence of camp, supplies, or preparation was found. These three theories are not exhaustive. Other possibilities exist: a fourth person unknown to investigators, an accident triggering tent damage followed by deliberate body disposal, equipment malfunction disorienting Hendrick into wilderness, geological hazards such as sinkhole or rockfall preceding a disappearance, or phenomena that do not fit conventional categories. Yet each theory carries both weight and contradiction. The question that remains is which contradiction matters more: the implausibility of psychology, the forensic mismatch of predation, or the logistical barriers of intentional removal? And what explains the circular zone, the polymer compound, the respiratory distress, and the pattern of similar cases? No body was ever recovered. No definitive evidence of death or location emerged. The case remains officially closed and unofficially questioned. The tent and hand imprint remain photographed and archived, viewed by few and discussed by fewer still. The satellite communicator sits in an evidence facility, its data never fully released. The claw mark measurements and the polymer analysis reports remain inaccessible to public scrutiny, and the circular zone in Glacier Peak Wilderness remains unmarked on any map, known only to those who stood at its boundary and watched the search dogs refuse to cross. Marcus Hendrick's sister continues to receive letters from families of other missing hikers. The cases accumulate, the patterns persist. The official explanations grow thinner with each new disappearance that mirrors the last. Tents damaged from within, dogs refusing zones, equipment positioned deliberately, bodies never recovered, and questions that echo across 30 years of archived files that few people have read. Which theory troubles you more? The psychological collapse of a stable man, the misidentification of predator evidence, or the possibility that the wilderness contains something that we understand neither how to track nor how to stop? And if you were to investigate one case more thoroughly than the others, the 4 historical disappearances or the current circumstances of Hendrick's absence, which anomaly would you begin with? The circular zone, the polymer compound, or the pattern itself? Watch our next investigation into the 1998 disappearance of David Chen, where identical anomalies appear in a location only 18 kilometers away.